Today I'm going to answer people's questions about fertilizing, planting, watering, and planting tomatoes for patio gardens. Some of you were asking about fertilizing, and this is what we do. We go to one of the neighbors who has horses, and we get well-rotted manure. And this is important. Like, it shouldn't look like poop. It shouldn't be wet. Like, the more dry and the more it looks like dirt, the more it's like broken down and like ready to go in the garden. Most books that I've seen recommend that you do about 1 inch of fertilizer, a fresh fertilizer every year, and this is something that a lot of us don't do enough of because it's not thick enough, and then that will definitely affect your growth. Hi. So a lot of people, my questions have been about planting and about how to plant and how much to space things and how much to fertilize. So I'll show you a few different examples today. Right now I'm kind of digging the soil a bit because I just want to get rid of any rocks or any weeds that are left, because no little tiny seedling is going to be able to compete with the weeds. So even little stones can kind of block the sunlight and make it hard for the roots to form. I'm going to plant corn here. And with corn, it's really important, the tassels kind of go back and forth, right? And they fertilize each other. So the mistake that you can make with planting corn is to plant it in a really long row. So instead, I have a bunch of thin rows, and I have this Vasey's sweet corn. And I'm gonna plant them, so I'm gonna do it about a handprint apart. Thinking about where you want to plant corn is really important too, because corn it casts a lot of shade, which is perfect for plants that love shade. So I'm planting them here, and behind me is the broccoli and the spinach and the Brussels sprouts. So those ones actually prefer cooler weather. So I'll show you here. So you can see these bright pink seeds. I spread them about a handprint apart. And how deep do you plant them? Really, the best bet, if you want to get it perfect, is most seed plants have, like, on the back, they'll say how deep and how far. You can also find that in certain books. But as to how deep, one easy rule is you go at least the depth of the seed. So for big fruit seeds like this, like corn, when you put it in, you're gonna put it as deep as twice down a piece of corn. So I soak my beans overnight just to get through that hard shell and give them a little bit of a start on growing. Then when I plant them about a hand's width apart, maybe a little bit more, maybe like 9 inches. And again, I go about twice the depth of the seed down. Beans are what some people call a gateway plant. They are probably the easiest thing to plant once you have them in the ground. They grow pretty much on their own. If you buy bush beans, you don't even have to trellis them. They'll just grow on their own and be ready to pick. They actually don't need hardly any fertilizer either. They take nitrogen out of the air, and they put them into these bacteria-filled nodules at the end of their roots. So they actually leave the soil richer than it was before you planted them. Okay, let's talk carrots. According to James Wong in this book, Growing for Flavor, the most important thing for sweet carrots is actually to have a low nitrogen as opposed to the corn that we just planted. One of the things that inhibits carrots is the rocks in the garden, so trying to get those out is really important. Carrot seeds are really small, so I created like a trough or a line, and I'm going to plant the carrots in there and then just lightly dust them with dirt. And I'm going to leave the divot in the garden so that it'll hopefully help to get some more water in this really dry season. Some people mix carrot seed with sand or with radishes, and apparently when you pull out the radishes, which are harvested earlier in the season, it makes room for the carrots to grow. It's really important to soak the plants down a lot and daily at this point, because if there's no part of the cell that stores water that can protect the plant at this point, Once they're well established, it's important not to water too much because otherwise they'll have roots just at the surface instead of reaching down and building a stronger, sturdier plant. Plant for patio pots. So here's a big pot. Already I did a mixture of half of my garden soil and half of an organic pro mix that I bought because you know, you can save. The garden is really fertile too, and you don't have to always buy the commercial ones. I also, as I suggested before, have the banana peel that I soaked in the water. And a tip that I got from my mom last night was to use eggshells. Apparently the calcium as well as the potassium is really good for tomatoes. So you can actually cook this in your oven and dry it out. But I just used this morning's eggshells. So I took this Peace Vine cherry tomato out of its pot. And I'm going to pinch off the bottom leaves, and I'm going to plant it as deep in the pot as I can get it. Then I'm going to take the dirt that I have pre-mixed and put it all the way around. Now you can see that big beautiful plant now looks like a much smaller plant, but its root goes all the way to the bottom of this pot, and it's going to be really strong and really sturdy as it comes up. Not everyone needs a fence around their garden, especially if you live in the city, but for us, we have a lot of deer, porcupines, raccoons, rabbits, and my chickens that get into the garden. We were hoping it would help against the porcupines, but not necessarily. The porcupines did get away, but I can't say quite the same for us getting away unscathed. And also the fence took a little bit of a beating against the porcupines. If anybody has any solutions to this, I'd love to hear them. And one last tip I have for planting is to plant flowers among your plants. It'll help to encourage the bees to come and pollinate your garden, and it also makes it really beautiful and adds some joy in the summer in the middle of weeding. Let me know if you thought this video was helpful, if it was kind of what you're looking for, maybe any other questions that you might have. I'll probably do a video later on next week when the tomatoes are ready to go in the garden and the other tender plants like the cucumbers and the squashes. And hope you liked it.